we've long known that social effects are very important in a number of settings, education, purchase behavior as well. But what we didn't have was one particular setting where we could cleanly measure the effect. And airlines are very interesting for this because, especially during flights, when you think about it, it's like we have a lab in the sky. We have a number of computers. We have people sitting in front of those computers where they can order food and drinks and movies. And on top of that, they're observing their neighbors' behaviors. And so it's very easy. It's a very nice setting to identify social effects when you're flying. The airline setting has a lot of advantages, and one of them is the following. Imagine you're trying to look for social effects in consumption, for example, in a supermarket. Well, in a supermarket, there's so many things going on. There are so many stimuli, there's so many price promotions, there are so many trials. And so it's very hard to know whether that particular person influenced another one in such a very complicated environment. And so one of the nice things about this setting, of the airline setting, is that we can actually distinguish what is simply what we call spatial correlation. And just the fact that maybe people in the front of a flight, for example, are more likely to have drinks than people sitting in the back of an airplane. We can distinguish that from what's really social influence. So the nice thing about this sitting arrangement is that you're much more likely to see what people to your sides are doing than people, say, in the back are doing. And so what we ended up doing was to compare the behavior of pairs of people who were sitting one in front of the other, and the person in the back actually had a neighbor by, but the person in the front didn't. So what does that do? Well, these two people are only separated by one row. They're also either on the middle seat or the window seat or the aisle seat. They're in the same type of seat. They're going to the same place, coming from the same place. So they're bound to be very similar in some regards. But the main difference is that one of them had the lateral passenger by something, where the person in front, well, for that person, is much harder to see that passenger. And so that was the identification strategy for the paper. And that talks to why this setting is so good to look at social effects. So the basic study was investigating what people buy when they're flying. So they buy movies, they buy drinks, they buy food items, and especially see what would happen to their neighbors after that purchase. So our focus was actually on the neighbors of purchasers. We would see whether they would be more likely to buy than other passengers who had not been influenced by their neighbors. And what we found was that, in effect, there were social effects. So there was a lot going on in terms of passengers' purchase influencing the behavior of the others. And so how is it that someone is influencing someone else? Is it just awareness? Oh, I hadn't thought about it, but now I see someone next to me buy, and that looks good, so maybe I'll get the same type of food, for example. Or could it be more information? For example, I haven't seen a certain movie, but I see that the person next to me is watching this particular movie. Maybe that tells me something about the quality of the movie. It's not so much of an awareness. Are there movies on board? I know they're selling movies on board, but there may be some information about the quality of the goods that are being served. And so what we found there is actually most of it seems to be related to awareness, not so much of quality inference per se, but it's more like it seems to be a more primary motivation of, oh, I saw something and it looks delicious, it's smelling very great, very good, and so now I'm actually hungry now and I want to get something to eat as well. So it seems to be more at the instinct level and less of a rational decision in terms of mimicking others. When we looked at people who had already bought, those people are actually interesting because they already revealed that they like buying stuff on board, that they may appreciate a movie during a flight, for example. So what we wanted to know there was whether these people could be more easily influenced by their neighbors, given that they already had revealed that they have a strong preference for the product. And that was a very big finding because we actually found that these people are systematically much more responsive to social effects than others. What we found was that once we investigated people who were flying with other people, so basically groups flying, there the influence is much, much higher. What I mean by that is, suppose we find someone who bought and likes buying things during a flight. It turns out that the other people in the group are also very responsive to social effects. Usually the saying goes that birds of a feather flock together. And so even in flights, people who have similar tastes are more likely to be flying together. And that's a pattern we find in our data. So groups, families, they're likely to have the same tastes. And that's very valuable information for marketers because that means that if I can identify one of these groups, say, in the flight, it could be a particular family that is very willing to buy things on board. Well, now I can identify a number of people who are interested in my products. The striking figure is 30%. The average passenger is 30% more likely to buy something if they see their lateral neighbor buy. And so that's the main finding, and we never thought it would be so high. Actually, that increase can go up to 100%. What that means is the purchase rate of a given passenger can as much double if they see someone next to them buy.